Harley Davidson is in serious trouble. The brand that once ruled the open road is now losing its most loyal riders. But why? What went so wrong? It started with a single decision, one that changed everything. A new CEO, a radical shift, and a corporate move that had Harley's biggest supporters asking, has the company abandoned us? In this video, we're breaking down exactly how Harley lost its way, why bikers are furious, and whether the company can still be saved. Let's get into it. What's happening? Harley Davidson built its reputation on the principles of freedom, rebellion, and raw American power. For more than 120 years, the company thrived on an identity that celebrated individuality, the open road, and the spirit of adventure. Its motorcycles were not just machines, they were a symbol of American culture. But today something has changed. Lifelong Harley riders, once the brand's most devoted supporters, are walking away in frustration. The controversy exploded during the 84th annual Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, a legendary event held in South Dakota where hundreds of thousands of bikers gather each year to celebrate their shared passion. In the past, Harley Davidson has been at the heart of the event, showcasing new models, selling exclusive merchandise, and reinforcing its dominance in the motorcycle world. But this year, Harley was not being celebrated, it was being criticized. Across Sturgis, conversations took a different tone. Instead of excited discussions about new Harley releases, riders voiced their outrage over what they saw as the brand's betrayal. Many pointed to Harley's push for diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, arguing that the company had shifted away from its traditional values. Others blamed leadership changes, accusing the company of embracing corporate policies that alienated its core customer base. But perhaps the biggest source of anger was Harley's aggressive push toward electric motorcycles, a move that clashed directly with what its riders wanted. The backlash did not stay at the rally, it erupted online. Social media platforms were flooded with frustrated Harley riders expressing their discontent. In Facebook groups, biker forums, and YouTube videos, discussions about Harley Davidson's woke transformation became the hottest topic in the motorcycle world. Many claimed that Harley was no longer a company for real bikers, but had instead become a corporate entity obsessed with politics and profit. The controversy escalated even further when filmmaker Robbie Starbuck publicly called out Harley Davidson's CEO, accusing him of pushing the company in a direction that alienated its most loyal customers. Starbuck's message spread quickly, igniting a new wave of criticism against the company. His statements echoed what thousands of riders were already feeling. Harley Davidson had lost touch with its roots. Harley's leadership could not ignore the backlash any longer. With social media outrage intensifying and loyal customers threatening to abandon the brand, the company knew it had to respond. But instead of putting out the fire, their next move only made things worse. Harley Davidson's official response was meant to calm the situation, but instead it fueled even more division. Harley strikes back. When a company faces backlash, there are two ways to respond: address the concerns of the customers directly or attempt to shift the narrative. Harley Davidson chose the second option, and it backfired spectacularly. In an attempt to quell the growing outrage, Harley released an official statement addressing the criticism. The company defended its commitment to inclusivity and diversity, stating that it had always been a brand for all riders. The message sought to reassure customers that Harley Davidson remained dedicated to its heritage, but it also dismissed the backlash as social media negativity that was dividing the community. The centerpiece of Harley's response was a phrase intended to reinforce unity. "United we ride." On the surface, it sounded like a bold declaration of Harley's identity, but to many riders, it felt hollow and disconnected from reality. Instead of bringing the community together, the statement amplified the frustrations of those who already felt alienated. For years, Harley's core audience had been made up of blue-collar workers, veterans, and motorcycle enthusiasts who valued tradition over corporate messaging. Many saw the statement as corporate spin, an attempt to downplay their legitimate concerns. Rather than admitting to alienating its base, Harley Davidson tried to paint the controversy as a misunderstanding, a move that only intensified the backlash. The response did not go over well. Thousands of riders flooded social media, rejecting the company's statement as tone-deaf and dismissive. Many called for a complete boycott, vowing not to buy another Harley until the company changed changed course. The frustration reached a boiling point, and the demand for CEO Jochen Zeitz's removal grew louder. Harley Davidson had already been struggling with declining sales and an aging customer base. The last thing it could afford was losing the trust of its most loyal riders, but instead of regaining control of the situation, Harley's response pushed even more customers away. But who was responsible for this shift? Why had Harley Davidson moved so drastically in a direction that seemed completely disconnected from its customers? To understand that, we need to take a closer look at the man running the company. Harley's transformation did not happen overnight. It was driven by the vision of a CEO who many riders believe never fit the company's culture in the first place. A CEO who doesn't fit the Harley Davidson image. At the heart of Harley Davidson's transformation is Jochen Zeitz, a German-born businessman whose leadership style clashes with everything Harley once stood for. For many longtime customers, the fact that an environmentalist from Europe was in charge of an iconic American motorcycle brand was already concerning. But it was his bold changes that made him the most controversial CEO in Harley's history. Zeitz's background had nothing to do with motorcycles. Before becoming Harley Davidson's CEO, he had spent nearly 20 years as the CEO of Puma, the global sportswear company. After leaving Puma, he became a prominent advocate for sustainability and climate-conscious business strategies. His entire career was built around corporate social responsibility, carbon neutrality, and sustainable innovation. A sharp contrast to the gas-guzzling, loud, and rebellious image of Harley Davidson. When Zeitz took over, he wasted no time in pushing Harley Davidson toward a new future. He aggressively promoted electric motorcycles, rebranded the company's global image, and focused on attracting a new, younger audience. In his mind, these were necessary steps to modernize the company and ensure long-term success. But for Harley's loyal riders, this shift felt like a complete betrayal. They had never asked for electric motorcycles. They had never wanted corporate activism. They just wanted the same Harley Davidson they had always loved. Under Zeitz's leadership, many felt that Harley was no longer a company for real bikers. It had become just another corporate entity trying to appeal to the mainstream. But Zeitz's most controversial move was still to come. The push for electric motorcycles would become one of Harley's biggest failures. Harley Davidson believed that electric motorcycles were the future, but they made one critical mistake. They forgot to ask their customers if they wanted them. Harley's biggest miscalculation. Harley Davidson has always been known for its roaring engines, heavy chrome, and rebellious attitude. The brand built its empire on the idea that motorcycles should be loud, powerful, and filled with character. Yet under CEO Jochen Zeitz, the company decided to gamble its future on electric motorcycles, hoping to capture a new audience. The result was LiveWire, Harley Davidson's first ever electric bike, and it was a move that would change everything. Just not in the way the company had hoped. LiveWire was supposed to be the bridge between Harley's legendary past and a new environmentally conscious future. It was designed to appeal to a younger urban audience, one that prioritized sustainability and cutting-edge technology over the traditional biker lifestyle. But there was one major flaw in this plan. That audience was never part of Harley Davidson's core market to begin with. The people who had built the brand, the ones who spent decades embracing its culture, had no interest in an electric Harley. Instead of drawing in new buyers, LiveWire alienated the riders who had been loyal to Harley for years. The silent engine was a direct contradiction to what made Harley Davidson special. A Harley is supposed to roar, it is supposed to announce its presence long before it arrives. Without that signature sound, many riders felt that LiveWire was not a Harley at all. And then came the sticker shock. LiveWire was expensive, far more than traditional Harley models. With a price tag of nearly $30,000, it was simply out of reach for many potential buyers. Worse yet, its range was disappointing, offering far fewer miles per charge than most riders wanted. Compared to traditional motorcycles, which could refuel in minutes and keep going for hundreds of miles, LiveWire required long charging times and provided a fraction of the range. The result? A total market failure. LiveWire flopped spectacularly, selling in embarrassingly low numbers despite massive marketing campaigns. Dealers struggled to move the bikes, and many riders mocked the idea of a silent battery-powered Harley. Instead of ushering in a new era for the company, LiveWire became a symbol of just how disconnected Harley Davidson's leadership had become from its customer base. Harley Davidson had gambled on the future, but in doing so, it had forgotten its past. And just as the electric experiment was was unraveling, the company doubled down on yet another controversial corporate shift, one that would further alienate its core audience. The failure of LiveWire was a wake-up call, but it was only part of a larger identity crisis. As the company tried to rebrand itself with modern corporate policies, it unknowingly set itself up for even more backlash. The DEI push. Harley Davidson was once a brand that proudly represented blue-collar Americans, veterans, and rebellious spirits. But in recent years, it took a drastic turn, aligning itself with corporate diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that left many customers questioning whether the brand still valued them. The push for DEI policies within Harley Davidson was meant to present the company as a progressive and inclusive organization. Hiring initiatives were put in place to focus on diversity metrics rather than experience and qualifications. Sponsorships and brand partnerships started shifting away from the traditional biker audience and toward causes that many longtime riders saw as irrelevant to their world. Even Harley's marketing campaigns changed, replacing imagery of gritty tattooed bikers on long road trips with sleek, corporate-friendly diversity ads that felt completely disconnected from the culture Harley had built. For many Harley Davidson enthusiasts, this transformation felt forced and unnecessary. They were not opposed to diversity. They simply felt that their lifestyle, history, and values were being erased in favor of a corporate agenda. The backlash was immediate. Social media was flooded with riders who vowed to never buy another Harley. Some took their frustration directly to dealerships, expressing their disgust with the direction the company was heading. Harley's leadership insisted that these changes were necessary for the company's long-term growth, arguing that it needed to adapt to a changing world. But the reality was that these policies were pushing away the very people who had kept the brand alive for more than a century. Sales numbers did not lie. Harley Davidson was not suddenly attracting millions of new customers because of its DEI policies. Instead, it was losing its existing ones at an alarming rate. This was a brand that had always been about freedom, rebellion, and the open road. Now it was becoming just another corporate entity following the same playbook as every other big business. And for the hardcore Harley fans, that was unacceptable. As the backlash intensified, the anger spilled beyond dealerships and into the digital world. Bikers turned to social media in full force, making sure their voices were heard loud and clear. The social media backlash. Harley riders speak out. Social media has become the ultimate battleground for public opinion, and when Harley Davidson started losing its most loyal customers, they took the fight online. Bikers from across the country vented their frustrations in viral posts and videos, calling out the company for abandoning its roots. The backlash was not just a few angry voices, it was an entire community rising up against what they saw as corporate betrayal. The most high-profile criticism came from Robbie Starbuck, a conservative filmmaker who openly attacked Harley Davidson for its corporate activism and abandonment of its traditional audience. His viral posts resonated with thousands of riders, many of whom had already expressed concerns about the company's leadership and brand direction. Riders shared videos from Sturgis and other major motorcycle rallies where banners and chants reflected their frustration. "We want our Harley back" became a common theme as riders demanded a return to the brand's rebellious blue-collar roots. Harley Davidson tried to respond, but every attempt only made things worse. The company's statements were carefully worded corporate responses that failed to address the real grievances of its audience. Instead of acknowledging the concerns of lifelong riders, Harley's leadership doubled down on their stance, insisting that the company was evolving in the right direction. But riders were not buying it. Literally. Many who had been lifelong Harley buyers declared that they would no longer support the brand unless major changes were made. Sales figures continued to reflect this growing dissatisfaction, with dealerships reporting slow-moving inventory and declining interest. For the first time in its history, Harley Davidson was not just losing relevance, it was losing the trust of the people who had built it into a global icon. And as the anger spread, the future of the company became more uncertain than ever. With sales plummeting and a growing divide between the company and its customers, Harley Davidson now faced a major financial crisis. Could the brand still recover, or was this the beginning of the end? The decline in global markets. Harley Davidson is not just struggling in the United States. Its problems extend worldwide. The company has been a dominant force in the American motorcycle industry for more than 100 years, but when it comes to global markets, it has failed to establish itself as a true leader. While other motorcycle brands have successfully expanded into Europe, Asia, and South America, Harley Davidson has struggled to gain traction. One of the biggest challenges Harley faces is the impact of tariffs and trade policies. When President Donald Trump introduced tariffs on imported steel and aluminum, it drove up the cost of manufacturing motorcycles in the United States. In response, the European Union imposed retaliatory tariffs on American motorcycles, making it more expensive for European riders to buy a Harley. This created a massive drop in sales across Europe, one of Harley's most important international markets. Beyond tariffs, supply chain disruptions have further complicated Harley's ability to compete. The global economy has been facing rising production costs, shipping delays, and inflation, all of which have driven up the price of Harley Davidson motorcycles. As a result, many international buyers have turned to more affordable brands that offer similar quality at a much lower price. This is especially true in Asia and South America, where riders overwhelmingly prefer smaller, more cost-effective motorcycles. In countries like India, Thailand, and Brazil, the market is dominated by companies like Honda, Yamaha, and Bajaj, which specialize in compact, fuel-efficient bikes that cost a fraction of what a Harley does. Instead of adapting to these markets by producing affordable models that match local preferences, Harley has continued to push its premium-priced motorcycles, effectively pricing itself out of the competition. Harley Davidson attempted to gain ground in emerging markets with the launch of the Street 500 and Street 750, smaller and cheaper models designed to appeal to international riders. However, these bikes failed to gain traction as they were still more expensive than local competitors and lacked the brand loyalty that Harley enjoys in the United States. In 2020, the company pulled out of India altogether, shutting down its manufacturing operations in the country and abandoning what could have been one of its most lucrative markets. The global motorcycle market is changing, and Harley Davidson has not been able to keep up. Instead of adjusting its strategy to meet the needs of international riders, the company has continued to rely on its outdated business model, which works in the United States but falls flat overseas. With shrinking market share, rising costs, and increasing competition, Harley is being squeezed from all sides. With its international presence shrinking and domestic sales in free fall, Harley Davidson has no choice but to fight for its survival. But is there still a way forward? Can Harley turn this around, or is it too late? One of Harley Davidson's biggest strengths has always been its brand heritage. Despite all the controversy, there is still immense value in the Harley name. If the company wants to survive, it must reconnect with its loyal riders while also adapting to modern trends. Harley Davidson has already taken some steps to turn things around. One of the biggest moves is returning to its roots with classic designs. The company has started focusing again on its big V-twin cruisers, baggers, and touring bikes, which have always been the backbone of its business. New models like the Harley Davidson Lowrider ST and the updated Road Glide and Street Glide are designed to capture the nostalgia of traditional Harley riders while incorporating modern technology. Another key factor in Harley's potential recovery is affordability. One of the biggest reasons the company has struggled is that its motorcycles have become too expensive for the average rider. Harley Davidson has recognized this issue and is attempting to lower prices and introduce more accessible models. The launch of the Nightster 975 and the upcoming smaller displacement models aims to make Harley bikes more attainable for younger and international riders. But affordability alone will not be enough. Many experts believe that Harley Davidson needs a leadership change to truly course correct. CEO Jochen Zeitz's vision for Harley has been met with overwhelming resistance, and many believe that his approach has done more harm than good. If Harley wants to win back its customers, it may need to replace Zeitz with a leader who understands the brand's heritage and is willing to listen to its loyal riders. At the same time, Harley cannot ignore the future. While its push toward electric motorcycles may have backfired initially, the reality is that electric vehicles are here to stay. The key for Harley Davidson will be finding the right balance, continuing to build gas-powered motorcycles for its traditional riders while also developing electric models that actually appeal to its customer base. This means more affordable electric options, better range, and technology that enhances the riding experience rather than stripping away what makes Harley special. Harley Davidson still has one last shot to turn things around. The company has the brand power, the loyal fan base, and the history to make a comeback, but the next few years will be critical. If Harley Davidson cannot win back its customers and adapt to the changing market, it risks becoming a relic of the past. With its reputation damaged and its financial stability in question, Harley Davidson is not just facing an internal crisis. It is part of a much larger trend, the anti-woke business backlash. Harley Davidson is not the only company that has faced a fierce backlash for embracing corporate diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. In recent years, several major brands have found themselves in the middle of political and cultural firestorms, and the consequences have been severe. Companies that once dominated their industry suddenly saw sales drop, stock prices fall, and customer loyalty crumble overnight. Perhaps the most infamous example of this is Bud Light. Once the top-selling beer brand in America, Bud Light saw its market dominance collapse after a marketing campaign featuring Dylan Mulvaney, a transgender influencer, sparked nationwide outrage. The decision alienated millions of Bud Light's traditional customers, leading to a massive boycott. Within months, Bud Light lost billions of dollars in sales, and stores across the country reported that cases of Bud Light were gathering dust on shelves. The backlash was so severe that Anheuser-Busch was forced to change its marketing approach, trying desperately to regain lost consumers. Bud Light was not alone. Disney faced an intense backlash after it publicly opposed Florida's parental rights bill, sparking a legal battle with Governor Ron DeSantis. Many conservative consumers accused Disney of pushing a political agenda rather than focusing on its core mission, entertainment. The controversy led to boycotts of Disney Plus subscriptions, declining theme park attendance, and a drop in its stock value. Even some of Disney's biggest movie franchises began underperforming at the box office, further proving that consumers were willing to push back against companies they felt were prioritizing activism over quality products. Target, another major brand, found itself in a similar situation when it introduced Pride-themed merchandise aimed at children. The backlash was swift, with customers calling for boycotts of the retail giant. Target's stock took a major hit, and executives were forced to pull some controversial products from stores in an attempt to calm the outrage. These examples highlight a larger shift in consumer behavior. For years, companies assumed that embracing socially progressive policies would help them expand their customer base. But what they failed to realize was that many of their most loyal customers had no interest in seeing their favorite brands become political battlegrounds. The backlash against these companies was not just about politics, it was about consumers demanding that brands focus on the products and experiences they originally stood for. Now, in response to these major financial setbacks, several companies are starting to backtrack on their woke initiatives. Bud Light has tried to win back customers with more traditional advertisements, emphasizing sports, country music, and American values. Disney has toned down its political messaging, shifting its focus back to family-friendly content. And Target has become more cautious about how it approaches controversial social issues. The question now is whether Harley Davidson will learn from these lessons. Unlike Bud Light or Target, Harley Davidson has an even more distinct and passionate customer base. It is not just a brand, it is a culture, a community, and a way of life. If Harley Davidson wants to regain trust, it cannot afford to ignore the backlash. But will the company make the necessary changes before it is too late? To understand where Harley Davidson goes from here, we need to take a step back and ask the big question, was going woke really what caused this downfall? Or was it just one piece of a much larger puzzle? But before we reveal the truth, let us know what you think of this topic in the comments below. What really happened to Harley Davidson? Harley Davidson's decline is more complex than just abandoning its roots. While backlash against corporate activism and electric motorcycles played a role, shifting consumer habits, economic pressures, and rising competition were equally damaging. Younger riders are less interested in heavyweight cruisers, opting for smaller, more affordable motorcycles or alternative transportation like electric scooters and ride shares. Economic factors, including inflation and high interest rates, have further discouraged big-ticket spending. Meanwhile, Japanese and European brands like Honda, Yamaha, and BMW BMW have gained market share, offering more affordable, feature-rich motorcycles. Even in the heavyweight cruiser segment, Indian Motorcycles has emerged as a strong competitor. Harley Davidson's push toward electric motorcycles was a bold move, but it failed in execution. Instead of easing into the market with hybrid options or lower-cost electric models, Harley introduced an expensive electric bike that alienated traditional riders and failed to attract younger consumers. The result was a product that lacked a clear audience. To survive, Harley Davidson must reconnect with its core customers. This does not mean abandoning innovation, but rather blending modern technology with the brand's classic identity. The company must rethink its marketing strategy, prioritizing loyal riders while making natural, incremental changes. Additionally, repairing relationships with frustrated dealers and addressing pricing concerns will be crucial. Above all, Harley Davidson needs to listen to its riders. They want the raw, powerful experience the brand is known for, not overpriced electric bikes or corporate messaging that feels disconnected from the rebellious spirit of Harley. If the company makes the right moves, it could stage an incredible comeback. If not, it risks fading into history as yet another legendary brand that lost its way. The next few years will determine its fate. What do you think? Did Harley go too far with its changes, or was this downfall inevitable? Can the company turn things around, or is it already too late? Let us know in the comments.